17 minutes for what
Oh, yeah, but we're going to stop at 11 a.m. anyway, just to,
okay.
So everyone can, just, I mean, vent, just whatever. So, okay, so we'll get started on this. I mean, it's a wonderful, rich, we're only going to go through 3 dialogues, but they're just so beautiful. I mean, the last one on the 20th is one of the most beautiful prayers I've ever read. Hi, Marina. How are you? And the prayer on the 20th, which is sort of a summation of what he's done so far, is just very, very beautiful. And I mean, you almost want to read it line by line, But anyway, we're going to start. Hi, Tim. Just get started here. So yeah, hi. We're just going to go through these. They're very, very rich dialogues, and so we want to go through them carefully. Okay. Now, the first one was on December 15th of 2013, and or 1913. So again, we got to remember that this is before World War I. So as far as Jung knows right now, he's going crazy, and he had this horrible, he's feeling unbelievably depressed, unbelievably low, because, he's trying to grasp or grope in the darkness of disconnecting himself with absolutely no other alternative from the psychological community, because they did not, his snake did not agree with them, and he knew that something else was important. And it really was just writing symbols of the libido, or symbols of transformation. He started on them into the mythic realm. And so anyway, the first one is kind of short, but it's on December 15th, and he just reads now. He reads, "The book of my most difficult experiments." That's the first thing he says. Well, Sonu Shamdasani titled a whole chapter on that, the book of my most difficult experiments. So he knows this is an experiment only he can do, and it is one where a world is opening up to him. A heretofore unknown realm is opening up to him, and we're going to find that today, what this realm is. At least he's recognizing it. He says, "I open you with inner resistance." He says this every time. I mean, he's doing this after, again, seeing 7 to 9 patients a day, having, I think at that time, at least 4 children, and, having, being married, and also still, lecturing and writing papers and everything else. So he's coming to this book really late at night with great resistance, inner resistance. And he says, "I have to coax myself like a nervous horse. Everything in me balks at the immediacy of this experience. The more I read this, the more I know what a treasure this is, because it's something that was never meant to be published, and it's a human being, discovering the realm of soul, and discovering that its ontological purpose in the universe is to be an empty vessel for this realm that he's discovering for the first time. Like Jung used to say, discovering this realm at the first time is like Copernicus discovering that the earth revolves around the sun, not the sun revolves around the earth. So you're discovering you're not the master in your own house. This is what we're seeing in this thing. And he says, I shy away from myself as if I were a nocturnal monster. And this means kind of that, that he is confronting things that are so odd. I mean, he has this, let's see, and we're going to find this in the next dialogue as well, that he is what he's confronting in is so non-ego, and it's frightening. I mean, this is this figure that he sees over and over again, and he's does a painting, a wood carving, another painting, and then he does a actual sculpture of it in his garden of a figure he calls, I know I'm mispronouncing, but it's Amatu Victu. It's that's what he called this. But it's this monstrous being of the soul, who, by the way, this is one of the strange things about being a human being. We still have this inside of us, this consciousness, which Jung called eyes of beauty and woe. This is still alive in us. And it's not human, but it's there, it's there. And so now the difference between that bear and us is our bear is speaking to us with grammar and with language and with words. In the bear's awareness, it's speaking a different language, more image-based. But I think really that is why the unconscious is called the realm of images, is because before the Homo mythicus came around, or the non-knuckle walking hominids, as Joseph Campbell called us, how did it communicate with the consciousness of the bear? It was with images, So this is kind of a vestige of the period before there was this magic of grammar and words and sentences, which So a word, which Jung always says are actually gods, each one of them, alive. And that's why the anchorite tells him that the book that he keeps reading over and over again is alive. So don't ask me why I read the same book over and over and over again, especially when it is if it's a genuine product of the unconscious. Okay. Hi, Kevin, by the way. I didn't say hi. Nice to see you.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you, everyone.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, now, the other thing that bothers him about this is the subjectivity of it is so foreign to what he's been doing being this thinking person who's, usually using almost geometrical proofs, to do his science. And now suddenly his science is these strange images and this subjectivity in him. And, is the subjective is horrible and terrifying to him. And he says, as if I should devalue everything that's subjective in me should be devalued and is superfluous. Well, he's finding it's not, I mean, now you can call it subjective, but we're going to learn what subjectivity is soon, where really all these things that are coming into our awareness are not subjective. What is it they say? the alchemists say, objectify the personal. That means all your emotions, all your fears and your doubts and everything, objectify them. But personify the objective. These images that come to you, give them names, talk to them, write dialogues to them, ask them questions. That's the alchemical way, So the subjective, what he must overcome is the feeling that the subjective is nothing and it doesn't mean anything. All these images, these hypnagogic visions and dreams that he's dealing with in this book of my most difficult experiments. So then we go to the dialogue on 12:16. He's doing a lot in this period. And if you remember, he missed 2 weeks, of this, and now he's coming back to it. He did about 4 dialogues 2 weeks after he wrote his letter to Freud. Then he waited 2 weeks, and now this is what we're seeing is sort of the second iteration of his going to this book. So he cried. Some voice cried within him, or he cried himself. To journey to hell means to become hell oneself. He's experiencing agony, and that's why I think if he didn't experience this agony, he would not be coming to this book over and over again. It needed this agony, this, what Jung used to say, that unless you can touch bottom, you can never be human. A complete whole human. You have to touch bottom. This is something that you discover too in AA. A lot of people, until they have absolutely reached the lowest level where everything is gone, they have nothing left, can they start the journey back to healing? Because after you awaken, after you've experienced the wound, you've awoken the healing aspect in you that can treat the wound, but you have to experience the wound first. So this is what Jung is experiencing, is the deep cut of this wound. And while this agony is occurring, the healing, redeeming thing is being formed in him also. So it has a symmetry, and we all have this symmetry within us. Jung used to say, if you experienced some grievous wound that could never be healed, and in the example with this would be losing a child to either suicide or someone murdered your child or something. How do you heal that wound? And he said to be in service to others who suffered the same wound, So anyway, he says, to journey. Now you can state this another way. To journey to the depths means to become the depths oneself. I think there is a lot of still Christian vestiges that come in here, this dichotomy between good and evil that later becomes more of takes on a lunar character, a more Taoist character, a more feminine, motherly character, where the perfection is not the goal anymore. It's completion, And so at that point, when you're dealing with the completion aspect, there doesn't become you're not in the realm of opposites anymore. You're in the realm of ambiguity, So that's the lunar or middle realm. And he says it's so frightfully muddled and interwoven, I love that word. It's interwoven, there's warp and woof, involved on this, and he says, my soul on this desert path, there is not just glowing sand, but also horrible, tangled, invisible beings who live in the desert. I did not know this. And he says, the way is only apparently clear. The desert is only apparently deserted and empty. It seems inhabited by magical beings who attack me and demonically change my form. Okay, well, this is, you know, we take for granted our animalness, you know, and that is for a very, very deep individuation. You know, our animal form is something that we need to assimilate. You know, there's that aspect in there, and so he's seeing some of these things, and so the depths are giving him everything they have, you know, and then he says. It seems to me that I have become a monstrous animal form, which I no longer recognize myself. Okay, this is C.G. Jung, you know, a scientist, very renowned, world renowned, and he's in these dialogues. At least he's experiencing the fact, and he experienced that when he turned into to Ion, you know, or Abraxas, where he assumes a lion face, you know, and I mean he's actually he actually is experiencing or feeling that his outer form has assumed this animal form. I think this is not he's not speaking metaphorically. He's actually feeling it. That's what I like about these things is. Jung very rarely, I mean, usually almost always when he writes something, he is speaking literally, you know. So when he talks about psychology, he means the study of the soul. Now, that's not what other psychologists think it means, you know. So anyway, he says he's surrounded by hellish magic. Well, he's surrounded by hellish magic is the psyche, you know. The psyche is what Jung used to say is what the ancients called magic, we call psyche. So, hi, Robin. We're just getting started here. You haven't missed too much here. We haven't got to the good parts yet. So, okay. All right. So then a voice says, climb down into your depths. And he says, how shall I do it? And then the voice says, sink. And then he says, how can I sink? This is the hardest and highest art, to let yourself sink. Teach me. I am unable to do it by myself. And the voice says, sit yourself down. Be calm. And then he says, how frightful. Forgive me, it sounds like nonsense. Do you also demand this of me? Can you hear the uproar of outrage within me? Now, yeah, you know, I'll just say one of the things I did, and I'm still doing, I actually started doing it again because, you know, I don't like repetition. I think there's sometimes too much repetition in my active imaginations. And I'm starting to do something I did at the very early part. I summon Inanna, okay? And I go down a set of stone stairs with her to a gate, and we both remove an article of clothing, okay? And then the gate opens. Then we go down to the second gate and remove another article of clothing until we go through 7 gates. And we are now we have no more persona on us. And there we are at the very bottom, at the rock on which the house of wisdom is built, you know. And so that's a good place to start if you sink, you know. And so then he's not sure about this, and this is going to be resolved a little bit later. But he says to her, can you hear the uproar of outrage in me? You overthrew the mighty gods who are powerful and mean the most to us. You know, in other words, why is he coming to her? It's because there is no religion to save him now. I mean, there's no outer forms that can resolve this problem he's facing. So she has overthrown the mighty gods, you know, and the outer forms of religion don't speak to any, at least to the people that are going through this experience anymore, you know. And he says, my soul, where are you? Have I entrusted myself to a stupid animal? Now he's saying this because it's also non-ego. It's so strange. And he's now you'll notice after this, he seems a little severe, but then the next dialogue, he's assimilated and incubated some of these very severe statements. And now he's coming at, he just needed to get it out of himself, you know, which is this honesty. I think it was this honesty that saved him. If he felt it, he said it, you know. So if he's being very honest. So he says, have I entrusted myself to a stupid animal? Am I staggering like a drunkard to a roadside ditch in order to sleep off a wild intoxication? Just means, what is happening to me? Why am I experiencing all this stuff? And he says, do I stammer mangled nonsense like a lunatic? Is this your way, my soul? Forgive me, but the blood boils in me, and I'd like to strangle you if I could seize you. You weave the thickest darkness. Now, this is what we experience in our active imaginations. But instead of me and Gary just being patient with nothing happening, Jung is yelling at this darkness. You know, says he's trying to get it to respond, and he says, "But I yearn. Teach me." And the voice speaks again. My path is light. And light. My path is light. Do you call light what we call the worst darkness? Do you call our day, our awareness, night? Guide me, give me your light, give me your light. And then she says, my light is not of this world. Okay, that was from John, the book of John. My kingdom is not of this world, you know, but she says, my light is not of this world. And Jung says, I know of no other world. And then she says, should the other world not exist because you know nothing of it? You know, I mean, what Jung used to say to people who, you know, when he started to talk about some of his experiences, and people would look at him very doubtfully and say, well, I have not had such an experience. In other words, they're saying you're crazy. And Jung, that's no answer to Jung, because he's experienced these things. And he says, well, I'm sorry, but I have. Okay, so there's no argument against that. You know, if you've seen an elephant, you've seen an elephant. You know, and if somebody can tell you elephants can't exist, you know, well, I've seen it. Sorry. Don't tell me it doesn't exist. Or the duck-billed platypus or whatever, you know. So anyway, he says, but Jung says, now he's talking about all this strange material that's coming up. And he says, but our knowledge, does our knowledge not hold good for you? What is it going to be if it's not knowledge? Where is our security? Where is the ground? Where is firm land? Where is light? Your darkness is not only darker than the night, but it's bottomless. It's a bottomless well. If it's not going to be knowledge, then perhaps you can do without speech and words too. Well, we just saw this face, right here. Where's the speech and words in that face? It speaks in images. But that bear gets as compelling messages as we do. It just has a different grammar, and it's not English, or whatever language you speak. No words either. And then Jung kind of saying as an aside, I could not have dreamed of a more horrendous destruction. I mean, this is the, his dominant function is thinking. He navigates through words, and the logos and the differentiating function. That's his way of being. And this inner voice is telling him that that's not going to help you here. None of this thing that you help navigate yourself on the outer world is going to help you here. Not words, not logos, not differentiating, not structuring things and explaining them. That is not going to help us here. And he says, forgive me, perhaps I'm hard of hearing, perhaps I misinterpret you, perhaps I ensnare myself in self-deceit, and I'm a rascal grinning at myself in a mirror, and a fool in my own madhouse. What are you talking about? There are no words either. I mean, he's reeling at that statement. Perhaps my full soul, you stumble over my folly. And then she says this, and that's why I say if there's a red letter edition of Jung soul speaking, it would be pretty good. She says, you delude yourself, but you do not deceive me. Your words are lies only to you, not me. That's what she says. And then he says, and then when he hears that, again, he's trying to maintain his standpoint. And he says, but I could wallow in raging nonsense, which like a breaking flood will swallow both you and me. And you know what I think he was thinking? Now remember, he worked at the Bergolzi, clinic. And, his mentors there were these two gentlemen, Emil Kraepelin and Eugen Bleuler. And these two men were unbelievably modern and compassionate in treating the insane. And at Bergolzi, the doctors had to have their dinners with the patients in the asylum, and they would spend they were supposed to spend their breaks with them, and so they were to be human to them. And this was what Eugen Bleuler taught Jung. And Jung met people like this there, like this guy, who is who he was known as the solar phallus man. He was a patient in Bergolzi, and he would take Jung over to the window and show him the sun, and he'd say, do you see that thing swinging underneath the sun? He says, that's the sun's phallus, and so it had a creative aspect. The sun had a creative aspect, which he was seeing. And, later, Jung saw in a book from couple, it was an early, I think it was an early Gnostic work, I'm not sure, but where they talked about the phallus of the sun. And so Jung knew that this was an image that was coming up again, it was a archetypal image, and it was coming up in this person. But he's thinking about that when he says these words, that we're wallowing in raging nonsense, what the solar phallus man was wallowing in, which like a breaking flood will swallow both of us. Then the soul speaks again. Now remember, the soul is again speaking this language, but somehow, and I believe that the inner world invented these words, and so we didn't invent them. They invented them so that they could evolve, so that the inner image, the whole idea, what Jung finds here, and what separates Jungian psychology from every other psychology, is that the ontological purpose of ego is to be an empty, after it has strengthened itself and fulfilled its biological role as husband, father, and taking care of its family, making sure they're okay. At that point, it's to become an empty vessel for the soul, and it's supposed to be filled with the image contents. And the way the soul is going to fill it now, because remember, the bear does not have this Archimedean point that's separated from its bareness, its role as a bear, and can look back at itself. So that's why we're broken. It's because we do. And we need to that's what the word religio means. It means a ligature or ligament, the thing that connects bones, ligature, a rope. Yoga comes from the word to yoke, two things together. What the word religio means is that now the ego is going to reunite with nature, with the source. And what we're discovering is, in Jungian psychology, you don't find it anywhere else, and you find it in alchemy, and you find it more richly than, and in Gnosticism, is that the ego is now, after the biological role has been filled, become an empty vessel, which is going to be filled with the images of soul. Unlike the bear, So it's a little bit of a different, has a little bit different functionality that Homo mythicus, symbol creating man. That's what Homo mythicus means, and so the soul then, after Jung says that, that this raging madness is going to swallow both you and me, she says, who gives you such thoughts and words? Do you make them? Are you not my serf, a recipient, a beggar who lies at the door and picks up my alms? In other words, she gives him these images. She gives him these words. She wants him to understand and be her partner. And yet he's saying they're madness. He's going to end up like Solar Phallus Man. A beggar who lies at my door and picks up my alms. And you dare think that what you devise and speak could be nonsense? These images from the soul, which are to fill him as an empty vessel, creating the symbol that he's right now is not getting. Don't you know yet that it comes from me and it belongs to me? And Jung says, but then my indignation must also come from you. You know, remember, he says he always has this inner resistance, and he's expressing his inner resistance now. He doesn't say, oh, okay, I get it. You know, I give. No, he says, he's trying to be as honest as he can and not be, you know, obstinate. But because he feels indignation, then my indignation must also come from you. You must be indignant with yourself also, you know, because he feels indignant. She just said everything that he thinks or says comes from her. He says, well, I feel indignant, so you must be indignant too against yourself. And then the soul speaks these ambiguous words. That is civil war. Okay. You know, she's saying he just doesn't understand. And he talks about that these are cliches, that this is something he says to everybody else. And he's suddenly feeling a sense of the banal. He doesn't understand this, that this is, there's a banality involved. He feels sick because it's drivel and comedy. But then he catches himself and he says, I yearn. I also crawl through the stinking mud of banality. And the devil on the desert path shall not catch me and fell me. I can also eat dust. Let it rain its filthy cliches or banality. I guess the banality is also part of the depths. He calls it hell. But I do not yield to the banality. I am defiant. You can, and then she talks about all these strange images, the spider-legged monsters, the comma. He thinks that she's trying to just, swim him in this chaos. He doesn't really understand it, but he says, and he doesn't understand the spider-legged monsters, the comical, hideous, frightful monsters. Send them, give me your best shot. Give me your most spider-legged monster. I am ready, my soul. I'm ready to wrestle with your spider-legged monsters. First, you donned the voice of the mask of a god, and I worshiped you. Now you wear the mask of a monster, and also the mask of the banal, of the dunghill of words and phrases. Only do me a favor. Give me a moment to step back and consider, is the struggle with these masks worthwhile? Was the mask of the god worth worshiping? Okay. I cannot do it. The lust for battle is bursting in his limbs. He's going to figure this out. You know, he was going to be like that. It was a figure in Odysseus. It wasn't Odysseus that was becalmed, and someone told him that if he would catch her father, who was a shapeshifter, he would tell him how to what god he had offended and needed to propitiate, and so they hide in seal skins because he's the god of seals. And he comes down to see his seals, and they jump out. They have all this stuff in their nose so they don't have to smell the horrible stench of the sealskins. And then they grab him, and they won't let him go until he tells them how to leave. And Jung felt the same way about all of these images. He was defiant, and he was going to seize them. He says, I want to seize you and crush you. And he calls her Hanswurst, which was was a figure in some comedy books in the turn of the century. Meant a buffoon. It's an unequal struggle. My hands grasp at air, but your blows are also air. And then suddenly there's a redeeming thing. I find myself again on the desert path, the desert vision. I mean, this is a shift, okay? So this is one of those sudden drops that Barbara Hanna talks about, that as he's saying all this stuff, suddenly, boom, he sees an image, okay? And the image is before him is the desert path, and he sees the solitaries wandering along its roads. And he says, that arrow hit the target. In other words, she sent him that image, and he said it hit the target. So, this is the arrow hitting the target. You look at the face there, that's young. I don't know if you can see it. I can make it a little bigger, I think. Let's see. See? It's mustache and everything else. That's young. But that's the arrow hitting the target. And he says, but he says, in this street lurk invisible robbers and assassins and shooters of poison darts. And it sticks in my heart. This hit him. And its poison burns. Bloody mists blur my eyes. Someone then, he feels it. This has actually happened. I mean, when we're reading these, it was Elijah told him, only write what you see. So he's only writing what he sees here. Someone loaded lead on my shoulders. He felt a burden being put on, a very heavy burden on his shoulders. And he says, but I want it. I want it. Okay. Now, keep an eye on the time here. The only reason I'm kind of going through this is because it's, if anybody has any comments, just jump in. Does anybody have anything? I mean, go ahead, Tim.
I'm struck with how similar this is to my discovery when I went through my process with the visitation by the Muse. A lot of these same elements came out for me. It's fascinating to me how similar it is. It always felt like such a totally unique experience, and I'm just kind of astonished at the parallels.
Yeah, it is. It is because he's a human being. You're a human being. I'm a human being. I mean, we're all human beings, and we're discovering this world. I mean, he's going to talk about it later in such. I don't know if we'll get to it, but the dialogue of 12:20 is a prayer to this world, and we're going to find out some of its nature. And he says at the end of the prayer, he says these beautiful words, that you make me utter these words, and you possess secrets, and I had no idea you had these secrets. And he's so grateful to her for sharing them. And I had I'll tell you, the most compelling experience I've ever had. Just recently here, let's see, this was an image I had. This was actual, I saw this. The soul, was ivory-bodied soul, sat next to me. And there was this muddy road. And then there was the most important image in the dream was this piece of wood with air in it. And then a dog lies at our feet. And she says, this is our path. Now, this is the first time she'd ever manifested to me in a vision, okay, like that, and clearly. I mean, I saw her slowly form in front of me, and then she moves like this to my right, and sits beside me. And anyway, it was. We can talk about that more later, but it was. That was actually after I restarted my Inanna thing to, going through the 7 gates. So that seemed to work pretty good. If anybody wants to try that. Okay, well, now the next dream is on 12:18. This is one of his most famous dreams, okay? Now, this one is not a vision, it's a dream. The following night was terrible. I awoke from a frightful dream. Okay, now this is the dream. And I love the version of this in the black books. We'll read this in the red books, and it's kind of like the images of the red stone and the injured hero, and then the scarab, and then the underground sun with all the snakes coming out. It's much more sparse in the black books, but I like it better because I think it has that sense of immediacy and reality before it's got layers of conscious attitude put on it. So there's this idea of this is we're experiencing it like Jung does here. And so he's with an unknown youth, and then he writes in later in pencil, a brown savage, and we're in a mighty mountainscape before daybreak, but the eastern sky is already light. Okay, and then they hear the hunting horn. Have you ever heard a hunting horn? Woo, like that. It's this kind of a real loud. It's also the same, I think, sound of that the Vikings ships would sound as they came into port or went into battle. He's sounding the hunting horn. So Siegfried doesn't just ride in his chariot. He accompanies himself with a herald of his coming, which is blowing his hunting horn. So that's kind of shows how what a great figure he is. And so his hunting horn resounded over the mountains with the jubilant sound, the joyful sound. And we knew that our mortal enemy was coming. And he underlines mortal enemy. We, him and this brown youth, are armed and lurk beside a narrow rocky path to murder the hero. And then he came across the mountain on a chariot made of the bones of the dead. Now, these are all important images, okay, that we can just gloss over, but they're pretty important. And now he says this in the black books, doesn't say it anywhere else. And he's in a white garment with black mystical figures on it. Okay, now if you'll remember when Jung had his image of of his wife coming out of a pit, she was wearing a white gown with black mystical images. So this is the second time we've seen this. And he drove with unbelievable boldness. I mean, a boldness that could not be believed. I mean, this is a god over the steep rocks, and he arrived at a narrow path, the narrow path where we lie in wait. And as he came around the turn, we fired. And at the same time, we fired, and at the same time, we both fired at the same time, and we wounded him fatally. Okay, so let's just look at the Jung's drawing of this. I don't know if I can make it a little bigger. Let's see. Now, in this picture, he's not wearing the white garment with the mystical things, but there's the mighty mountainscape and the light in the eastern sky. And young is apparently on the left in the red, and then the brown youth is on the right. And they have guns and they shoot. Okay. Well, one of the real interesting parallels is this. You know, let me show you this. Ooh, wait. Now, this is not a coincidence, by the way. That is the Archduke Franz Ferdinand being assassinated by Princip. So he's Siegfried. He's the great hero, the Archduke of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, son of the emperor, the crown prince. And he's being assassinated by a man named Princip in Sarajevo. And by the way, that was the third attempt. You know, they had missed him twice, and they gave up, and they're in a coffee shop drinking coffee. And then here comes the dummy riding right by the coffee shop again. This is the third time they tried to kill him. And here he comes out. So, Princip puts his coffee down, runs out the door of the coffee shop, and there he is in an open touring car and shoots him. Well, this was the event that started World War I, because at that point, the Austrians, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire consisted of Austria, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Croatia, Serbia, Macedonia, and there's probably another country that I'm not sure of, but it was what was used to be Yugoslavia, and the Serbs were, always in revolt. So then the Austrians moved in to crush this separatist movement in Serbia. And since the Serbs spoke a Russian language, somewhat like the Russian language, the Russians had guaranteed their autonomy, and they declared war. The Russian Empire, Tsar Nicholas, declared war on Austria, and then of course Germany. The Kaiser had such a close relationship with Austria. He declares war on Russia, and then King Edward declares war on who was the first cousin of the Tsar, declares war on Germany, and France joins them in an alliance, and that starts this crazy war where in one day 250,000 people would be mowed down by shotguns or machine guns or killed with mustard gas every day for 4 years. I mean, I think it averaged about 15,000 people a day or something wild figure dying every day in combat, So anyway, that also led to, it was this pivotal moment in history. And all these monarchies, the British monarchy, the French monarchy had gone away, prophesied by Nostradamus, by the way, in the 1790s. And so it didn't have a monarchy, but all the other countries did. Germany and Austria and Russia, and every single one of them, other than Britain, did not have a monarchy afterwards. They became, of course, in Russia, Lenin, I don't know what you would think of Lenin, a dictatorship. But anyway, and then after that, we've got, James Joyce, Picasso, Einstein, Gertrude Stein, Ernest Hemingway, the Dadaists, Paul Klee, Brancusi, Bertolt Brecht. I mean, there's just this explosion of free form art. Hemingway. Think of Hemingway. Think of Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake and T.S. Eliot. And The Wasteland. I mean, there's just this, and the Dadaists. The famous woman descending the stairs. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it was this, and where you got into this abstract freeform, and then Bertolt Brecht, Brancusi starts to suddenly sculpt like the Venus of Lespugue from 35,000 years ago. He's starting to sculpt in that kind of a way. And then Hemingway, he was, somewhat of that school. Faulkner, Faulkner wrote much like that. Just beautifully, combined history with it, But anyway, it was this great break, Jung and Freud, okay? Those were two, and Alfred Adler. So that after they had wounded him fatally, his companion rushes forward to finish him off. Okay, and so this is just shocking. Who kills Siegfried? Who can kill Siegfried? Who can kill this god? Well, Jung did. Who kills the Archduke of the Austria-Hungarian Empire? A Serb does. And thereafter he turned to flee, and a terrible rain swept down. Now this rain is very archetypal. After the murder, the rain falls. The unconscious, the heavens are unloosed, after this act. If you remember when Christ dies, it becomes dark at midday. The sun disappears. There's just this aspect of the cosmos is participating in this tragic event. So then he bounds up nimbly up an incredible steep path, and later helped his wife, who followed at a slower pace, to ascend. And people mocked us as we went, but I didn't care, since this indicated that they didn't know that he had just murdered not just anybody, but Siegfried. And after this dream, he went through a mortal torment unto death, and he felt he must kill himself if he couldn't solve the riddle of this dream. And his son, Franz Jung, says that he kept a gun in his table, because he was afraid he was going to end up like Saul on his bed by his desk, because he was afraid that he was going to end up like Solar Phallus Man, and at that point he was going to shoot himself. So he's very he's just reeling. So if he couldn't understand the dream, so he's lying awake in bed, and it dawns on him. Now remember, he just had this argument with the soul about not wanting to be drowned in the sea, but both her and him drowned like Solar Phallus Man in this nonsense, what he called nonsense. And but while he's lying there awake after this dream, it gradually dawned on me: the highest truth is one and the same with the absurd. Now, I think the idea there is that it is wordless, and there's no explaining it. That's the highest truth. It's wordless, and there's no explaining it. Now that's what the symbol of transformation is. He's actually what gradually dawned on him was the transcendent function, the philosopher's stone. That's what gradually dawned on him. The third thing, which is the symbol, and there is no words to explain. There are no words or systems of thought that could possibly contain boundless life, you know. And that's the same thing about the symbol, that there's no words to explain it. And that's what dawned on him. What the highest truth is one and the same with the absurd. This is the only way we can transform. This is how we communicate with the other world, you know, because the other world has the same awareness as as this being here. This is who we're communicating with, and yet it's using our words, but it's using it in the ancient fashion, you know, the ancient fashion with it communicates with all life. And that's through images. Now it adds words to that, which is a great leap forward in conscious awareness, because it has subjects, verbs, and predicates, you know. And so there is a flow to it of understanding, a more subtle way of understanding than you can have with images. But the highest truth, the symbol, is beyond words. And the two roles of ego consciousness is to be both the medium of expression of the absurd, and to be also to add some type of words to it that are of a symbolic thinking nature, though. You know, like Jung's soul told him that he needed to give his heart to the world of men and outer events, and his intellect to the inner world, which was the exact opposite of what he'd been doing up to that point. Okay, he'd been giving his intellect to the outer world, and he was sentimentally, because, you know, when you're a thinking function person, all you're feeling is very sentimental, and it's not very it's not real, it's fake, you know. So he's giving his heart. He doesn't know who he's giving his heart to. Sigmund Freud's daughter and Albert Ory, who was Jung's best friend, both described him as an asocial monster, you know, because, you know, Albert Ory, when he first met him, he says, "Who is this asocial monster?" And then when Jung came to meet Freud the first time, he sits down with Freud and Anna Freud, his wife, and his 5 children, and he completely ignores them all and just keeps talking to Freud about, it's at dinner time. Let's talk to the kids and the family and ask them. That's what my wife says to me. She says, stop telling so many anecdotes. She says, when you go into somebody's office, look at the pictures on their desk and say, now, who's this little guy? You know, because I suffer kind of too from being a head person, you know. I'm too much in the head, you know, and not enough in the heart. So Jung is supposed to give his heart to the world of men, which he hadn't been doing, as Albert Ory and Anna Freud, or Freud's daughter, said. That was something she wrote later in life, but she was 18 when he came over. Hi, Alex. We're just getting into the good dream here. Okay, so now at this moment, suddenly, like the rainstorm that came, there was a moment of healing catharsis. This is so beautiful too. It is absolutely gorgeous. In this moment, that enormous tension, after he realized that the highest truth is one and the same with the absurd, at this moment, enormous tension was released, and like rain, it swept away everything that was tensed before, too highly strung, and my sleep returned, And it brought with it a curiously beautiful image. Forms walked clad in white silk in a colored atmosphere, each surrounded by a strangely fragrant, glowing, tinted aura, some reddish, others bluish, and some greenish. Well, that's feeling, thinking, and sensation. It was a magical, spiritual, and sensual feeling radiated from this image, and I fell asleep like a convalescent. It was the healing thing. I had stridden across the depths, and now I see light, but it seems to me that I am in a new world. Where am I? You know, now, he says, shall I grope my way or crawl, or will something attach itself to me that leads me some way further? And then he says, certainly this is an animated world, a world of the simplest things. No world of will be or must be, it seems to me, but rather a world of maybe, with entirely undetermined possibilities, a world of colorful twilight. It's the middle realm. This is what James Hillman was telling us all about in Revisioning Psychology. And it's the middle realm of soul, this lunar realm, colorful twilight. You know, it's not a solar world. It seems as if there are only, now this is so beautiful to me. It seems as if there are only modest waysides here, close at hand. This is the immediacy of it, you know, the imminence. You know, there's an imminence, that God is imminent. This is the Hasidic tradition, is let's find what's holy in the everyday. You know, it's the imminence. There's only modest waysides here, close at hand, no distant targets. Like the desert told him, there's no distant targets. There's no broad military straight roads. It's of the simplest things. It's a strange world in between. Everything emerges in soft shades, a colorful painting, harmonically fused in itself. Just beautiful. And he told Aniela Yaffe later, and this is in the protocols. Hi, Alex. We're just getting into the fancy dream here. There is some kind of in-between realm. The term definitely occurred in the original version of the dream. The in-between realm. This is what James Hillman calls the middle realm of soul. So it's not the world of our world. It's not the world of God. It's this middle realm of soul. And you know, they say that Jung's God was his soul, and he's going to actually say that in the next dialogue, that she is some sort of a god. He doesn't know what kind. That this is some kind of in-between realm. And the term definitely occurred in the original version of the dream. The idea was that if one is confronted with the shadow, but I think he meant actually with the unconscious, as with the case through the experience of Siegfried's dream, then this idea comes forth. You enter a twilight. I am this and yet something else. So you're two things now. You weren't before. This is what the middle realm is. You're this and yet something else. This doubleness presents itself. My awareness plus my aura. Something that I am and something else that is distinct from me and yet is part of me. And it has an indication of the unconscious which reaches strangely far beyond me. like a saint's halo. This has the strange effect on the attitude towards the human being. If one is in the company of several persons and knows them and knows about their shadow, one sees these people as they are, but they are something entirely different. They are surrounded by a strange aura, by a strange sphere. Now, this is what he's saying about everybody he meets. He knows this. They live in a strange light-colored sphere which circumscribes this other, this I, and yet something else. So you got to think about that. You know, when the Indians, and I try to do this too, if somebody comes into my office and they are, you know, I don't know them very well. And I try to look, while they're talking to me, I look over their left shoulder and I try to see what the Indians called the long body. You know, I try to see their grandparents and their parents and their wife and their children as they're talking to me. You know, and I think this, since I'm don't have much of a very good feeling function, that helps me relate to people, you know, because I tend to be more of a head person. So anyway, they live in this strange light-colored sphere which circumscribes the other state. This seemed to me like a vision of the world beyond, where men are whole and complete, unlike here. And he says the halo is, in a saint, really characterizes the psyche. It's this psychic being. And, you know, I do have a couple images from this, and then we can kind of end and just start discussing. But I just wanted to, we didn't finish the Siegfried aspect, but I just wanted to show you a couple things here. One is, let's see, this, this is from the I Ching, but I just love it. It's, I showed you this last time. This is the, all that is visible must grow beyond itself, extend into the realm of the invisible. Now, if you are a Native American and you're a member of the Eagle Clan, you're not just this being in the, you are surrounding you is your Eagle Clan self, you know. So all that is visible must grow beyond itself and extend into the realm of the invisible. Now, this is what Jung is saying about this, everyone he meets, that they are I and yet something else. And then this was something, by the way, if anybody has, I will send you, but it's this book by Margaret Ostrowski Sachs. And it's her conversations with Jung. And for some reason, he would speak to her with these magical things, he'd say. And she wrote them all down and put them in a book. But he tells her the complete human being is never visible. He's indescribable and always a mystical experience. So he's I and something else, you know. Anyway, I think that's enough for today. Next time, we're going to get into the prayer of Jung says after he's done all this. That's the dream of 1220. He's going to suddenly assimilate all of this stuff, and he says a prayer to it. And I'll tell you, I do a lot of, in my active imaginations, I will stop and I'll try to figure out where am I. And then I try to, in somewhat of a prayer, you know, to whatever psychic figure you're talking to, is to just describe what it is in you that's broken, you know, just state it. You know, Jung said, we need somebody to talk to. And if you can't think of anybody else to talk to, he says, talk to your stove, you know, and tell it all your troubles. Well, that's the idea of the dialogue and the active imagination. But anyway, let's just open it up for any discussion. And Alex and Robin too, if you haven't been here before, you could put your email in the chat and we'll include you on the emails we send out.
Say, so, Greg, can you just repeat that last sentence you said about, well, there's two things I missed. One was you said we need to recognize that some part of us is always broken, and we need to address that.
Well, yes, in my active imagination, I tend to forget the fact that I am broken and that there's parts in me that are wounded, and I don't think about them. I tend to ignore them. So I stop for a second and just consider those aspects in me that are broken. And I really, I don't do this, but I do this when I'm doing my active imagination. I will say a prayer to, in my case, it'd be the Great Mother. Her name is Barbello, and it means the God is afore. And I just will tell her, I try to tell myself what's wrong with myself, spiritually or emotionally, whatever. But that's the aspect of myself that's broken. And so to try to start to address those situations, which I haven't addressed, and because I'm too oblivious, we're all oblivious, but anyway, Gary, I'm going to kind of turn it over to you, but why don't we, does anybody have any comments about anything that we've talked about or anything that they've done in the last week they want to talk about or anything? It's just general discussion. You don't have to talk about the black books, but maybe everybody could just make a statement, and I don't care what you say. Let's hear your statement, Gary.
Well, one of the things that just strikes me about the black books is how much these feel like a dream. It's like, I'm just so jealous that he can just bring all this stuff forth. And the thing about it is these images and these characters and the events that he's going through are so, you can just by, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to try this, because it's just by looking at this, that you could look at a section, get it really clearly in mind, close your eyes, and just embody the whole sequence. And in doing that, and I think this is a really good exercise. I'm going to torture you guys with it, not this time, but next time. And that'll be and I think it'll be out of the Red Book, because I know there have been people that have put on plays of the Red Book. And if you read the book, the Red Book for Our Time, which is a series of articles, in one of the articles, it's written by a therapist that was, he played like Philemon and a couple other characters in the Red Book. And he talks about how when he was doing, when he was getting in character and doing these plays, that he would become this. And then when he had to switch, but he would not only would he become this, but he would be feeling like he was just fully embodied and thinking the way, what this character does and feeling those emotions. It really took him over. And then when he had to go into another character, he actually needed some time to just stop and kind of empty himself and come back to something that wasn't that. And it could be that, some of the characters in the Red Book are just so archetypal that, that they really can absorb us in a way that, a more normal character might not be able to. But if you really think about it, if you're an actor and if you're in a play or something that means, you know, a great deal to you, and you're really feeling all these emotions so that you're truly embodying the character, that's active imagination. That's what it is. And so I think, you know, that's another way for us to get to it. So, you know, looking at things like this, if there's something really strikes you, you know, you can kind of, you can do your own exercise with it as a method to get there, because, you know, that's what we're looking for in active imagination. But
I would just make a couple of comments and then we'll go to Marina. The most accessible active imagination, and anybody can do this, is through just do a slight meditation, and then usually the best thing to do is take in a dream, because it's you know, it's genuine psychic material, and ask an inner figure, give them any name you want, give them a name, and just ask them, what does this mean? And what does that mean? And you'll find that when he or she answers, they're going to, like Gary, I'm sure some of your dialogues, if you did a red letter edition of them and just put the other side talking, you would find some absolutely every bit as rich as anything Jung is saying here. And by the way, it's and remember what James Hillman says: this is not a cosmic journey, you know. And I think one of the other aspect is the sensitivity and the honesty. We have to be sensitive of what we're feeling at that moment, and anything we feel, we need to ask questions about it. And also, if you're in a dark room, a holy room, and a sacred space, and everything else is plugged out, as Barbara Hanna said, there's going to be a sudden drops every once in a while, and you're going to see something. Well, if you see something, don't let it go. Grab it and ask, what was this about? You know, I mean, that's this sensitivity to what's happening. You know, like Jung said, what he learned from Elijah was to just be quiet sometimes. And he'd tell his patients, shh, be quiet. Something is happening. Let it happen, you know. And you know, I didn't really understand this until I started doing active imagination myself. But Marie-Louise von Franz says it's like a cat sitting beside a mouse hole, okay, waiting for something to appear. Well, you need to have, to describe that attitude is you're in a state where you're not impatient, you're not forcing anything, you're just there, attentive, but not impatient. Anyway, I say anyone can do this. The most accessible way is through the dialogue. Marina, just any statement you want to make about anything. I don't care what it's about.
Yeah, thanks. It's really good to hear you talking about it and going through it. I think the sudden dropping, I can really relate to the sudden dropping, and that is a little bit like when you have an illumination and something of the unconscious becomes conscious. And it's funny, really, because the unconscious is deep, and then something becomes conscious, it kind of rises. But it's lovely that Hannah talks about the sudden dropping, which is the equivalent, but in an opposite way, which I think, I don't know, quite cool in some ways. And this stuff is, you know, it's scary, and it's about embracing the absurd. I think that's what's coming to me. Embrace the absurd. Don't push anything away. In my active imaginations, and I'm not very good at them, but I'm trying, and hearing you talk is really helpful. Sometimes the absurd happens. A weasel will suddenly come into my consciousness, and I'm inclined to push it away. And now I'm saying, come back. What did you want to tell me? And I'm in that place at the moment. That's what I want to say.
Yeah, well, I think we got to turn it over to Gary here pretty quick, because he was going to do about a 15-minute exercise. But I just want to show you this really quickly. You know, now these are just hypnagogic images I had, but I don't let them go away. And there was 4 of them, you know, and I say they're all linked. What's the path? That's our path. That's what she says. What is the wood? It is, you know, you must draw this. I knew that instantly. She says it. And then the instincts at those 4 images, the instincts at our feet, at our standpoint, means that we need to, at our standpoint must be life, must be nature, you know. And so anyway, it's about Gary. Why don't you take over, because I think you have about a 15-minute extra. I'm sorry, Carl, that you know, I don't know, Carl. I would ask everybody here who's kind of here the first time, if you could put your address, if you haven't already, in the chat, we can get you on the email list. But go ahead, Gary. I'm going to mute now, and it's
cool. Okay, so I actually want to repeat the exercise that we did last week. And that's because, you know, I'm sure we have a lot of people whose feeling function is their inferior function. And because, you know, the realms that we really want to contact to do this work are the, you know, the places of feelings and images, you know, we really need to exercise our imagination to do it. And so what I did last week is I played it's a visualization that you dance to. And the dance is don't think, you know, think of it as very slow, graceful movements. I mean, you know, you want to be moving very, very, very slowly. Anyone looking at you might think that you're actually a statue or a mime or something. But then the other thing that you want to do, and this is one of the reasons that you're moving so slowly, is have your eyes closed. Because, you know, the visualizations, if you have your eyes closed, you'll feel these a lot more deeply than you would if your eyes were open, where, you know, it's just like, you know, like if you go to like a, you know, a symphony, a lot of times if I'm in a symphony, I close my eyes and then suddenly the music just gets so much more intense. And that's why we're going to do this with our eyes closed, but slow movements, so that we don't kill ourselves. So now I think I may actually be able to just share the computer sound. So instead, and go ahead and you know, kill your video feed, you know, but I'm going to see if I can. All right, somebody wave wildly if this doesn't actually come on.
Softly close your eyes and deepen your breathing. Imagine yourself stepping through a sheer turquoise fabric. It feels like you are passing through a veil into another world. An ethereal world pulsing with sound and vibrations. A world where angels play. Take a deep breath and begin to feel out into the space around you. Feel the movement of vibrations rippling and tingling around you. Feel that you are more than just your physical body. You have an alive energy body pulsing around you and through you. As you move your physical body, you feel your energy body expanding, pulsing, reaching out. As you dance to the music of the spheres, you feel lighter, ethereal, free. You are dancing in harmony with the universe. You find yourself standing at the entrance of a crystal cathedral. You step inside and feel the vibrations of the crystals shimmering around you and through you. Standing in the center of the cathedral is a dancing ethereal being. Music ripples from her. It is as though she is made purely of sound. She invites you to voice your own unique sound, to hum, chant, or sing the song of your soul out to the world. Feel the vibrations of your sound pulsing through your body. Imagine your sounds like hummingbirds gently flying out to the world. sharing your creativity, your truth. An ethereal choir forms a circle around you. As you sound your own sounds, the choir joins you in chanting healing sounds. Waves of blue light pulse around you and through you. Sound sings in every cell of your body. Feel the pure vibrations like lullabies for your soul. And now take 3 slow, deep breaths.
Well, and there we have it. And I think we're right at our meeting end time as well. I think you're on mute, Craig.
Thanks, Gary. That was great.
Yeah, great. Before we go, I'd like to hear if either Charles or Carl or Robin have anything to say. Charles, do you have any statement that you'd like to make or about anything? Anything.
I feel like I did at one point, but I kind of forgot. But I guess, I don't know. I think the kind of meditation part is really cool and I enjoy it. But for me personally, the music's like tempo and energy is like really upbeat for me, and it feels like dance music, which is fine and everything. But for me personally, it's really like high energy, and it's almost like it feels paradoxical to do very slow movements to it when I feel like it's something that you'd, as far as the tempo and beat is, it's like something that I would expect to find at like an EDM festival or something. But I do enjoy it. But I was gonna actually email you, Gary, to see if you'd want to sometimes throw in these like I listen to this traditional Mongolian band, and they do a lot of throat singing chants, and yeah, I think that would be a really cool music or sound.
Gyuto. I've heard them at University of Iowa. They were there, and no one else can make it sound.
I can actually do it quite well wow. For whatever weird reason. But yeah, I don't know. I enjoy it. It's like super high tempo and energy for me, and it's very energizing.
I think you do whatever the tempo is, but one thing I try to do is I try to imagine that this is not electronic, that all of those beings making that sound are there, including that guy that would do the very high solo singing. I try to see them all there. Carl, do you have any comments? You came in a little late, but we're going to send a link out later if you want to watch the beginning of it. Do you have any words of wisdom before we close?
No, words of wisdom, not really. I'd like to get in on a dream discussion.
Sure. Yeah, we have one now Monday and Wednesday, and it's the same link every time. The Monday at 7 Chicago time, and then and Wednesday at 7 Chicago time. And we're doing a couple of dreams right now in progress, but we'll put you on next. You know, whatever. When I think maybe you sent us a dream too. So
yeah.
Anyway,
just real quick, the symbolism of a book in a dream. What does that generally mean? Especially if the book is open.
Yeah.
And you're sitting on it. And then you have a book under each hand and you're flying like a magic carpet. What that?
Okay, well, let me just think that to me, that is the words of the, there is a wisdom basis to that. Now, we'd want to talk about that a little bit more deeply, but that this is the recorded wisdom of the sages. Are letting you soar, you know. Now that's just right off the top of my head, but if you'll put email the dream to us, sure. I think I can work it up before, and we can definitely reserve time for it. Robin, great. Did you have any thing you want to say before we close out, or not? You don't have to, but we just give you an opportunity. That's okay, Robin, if you don't want to. Does anybody else, Tim, did you have any closing thoughts or?
Well, I think we are at this really pivotal moment. We are standing on the threshold of a new kind of thing in this world. And I think it's wonderful that we're all really paying attention to the energy that's coming out of the unconscious. And I just want to express my appreciation for everybody who's involved in this kind of work anywhere. It's a real critical time. I think in 40, 50 years from now, people are going to be talking about this moment and how important this moment was in the transition of the human story.
Definitely. And anybody else, Marina or Gary or anybody? And we'll just end here. Nothing, Marina? Okay. All right. Okay. Well, we'll start up next time. I thought this was a great section, great material we were developing. And again, we'll go over it next time, but active imagination is always accessible through the dialogues, you know, so you don't need to, and it is not a cosmic journey. We just ask. So anyway, we'll see you all next time.